Okay, I think we're ready to go when you are.
Good, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, good evening, everyone. This is a Hideout Utah Town Council regular meeting, July 14th, 2022. This meeting is an electronic meeting with no anchor site due to the continued presence of infectious diseases such as COVID, monkeypox, etc. So we'll just try and maintain some distance. I'm going to call roll, confirm that we have a quorum of the council. Bob Nadelberg,
I am here.
Ralph Severini,
I am as well.
Sherry Jacobs.
I'm here.
Thank you. Chris Byer,
Here.
Carol Hazelton.
Here.
All right, well, welcome everybody. We have the full council. We also have key staff members available to support us through the session as we get to various topics. So we're ready to go. The first item for review is approval of council minutes of February 10th, 2022. So I'll scroll down to those and then come back to the agenda and see if any of the council members have any comments on these.
I have no comments or corrections.
Thank you, Carol.
Same for me. This is Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Nothing from my end there.
Thank you, Ralph. Bob, any comments on these?
I
You're
have
good?
nothing because I wasn't there. Thanks for excusing me.
Ah, that's right.
I wasn't there either.
Okay. Well then. I guess then what I'm looking for from you all or somebody is a motion to approve the minutes of February 10th, 2022.
I'll move.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Was Sherry the move?
No, it was Carol.
Carol, thank you. Okay. And so Carol moved, Ralph seconded. So Bob, okay to approve the minutes?
Yes,
Or you, yes. Sherry,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes,
Chris,
Yes.
okay, and Carol.
Yes.
Thank you. Minutes are approved. Follow-up items from council minutes. Tonight's agenda is actually pretty much a list of follow-up items from council minutes. So does anyone have any other follow-up items that we should add to the list? Although we won't talk about it tonight, we'll at least get it captured.
yeah, I noticed just a couple of things, Mayor, and that was I think it was page 2, if I'm not mistaken, line 37. Did we do any education on, or did we put anything up on our site? And that was part of the meeting around weed control education. Remember we talked about that?
Yeah, we did. I mean, we've done a significant amount of communication on weeds, Ralph. I don't know.
I think
Alicia,
one of the goals was to get something that people could, peruse at their leisure, so to speak. Is there anything on our site? I can't remember, to be honest with you.
Carol, I think Carol Hazelton is on. Carol Custerly, I think, is on the phone. And Alicia, do either of you know? Do we put anything besides the information about that people had to comply on the website? Because we talked about getting the weed.
Yeah,
book or
starting,
things.
can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Beginning with the January newsletter, we started educating people and notifying people that our weed efforts would be a step up this year. So we started in January, and then in February, I did an education piece. In March, I did another education piece. In April, I did another education piece. And in March and April, I also sent the weed letter with those, along with the Utah Field Guide. So those were sent out with the newsletter, and the newsletter also, encouraged people, instructed people. I think people got plenty of exposure because we started in January.
That sounds terrific, Carol. Do you think, have we kind of put a place up on our site where people could refer back to those?
Do you know, Alicia and I have spoken about this. We would both like to work on the website because our news and notices are organized together on the homepage of the website. And there were so many legal notices that needed to be up front and center on the website that we really didn't have room for the weed information, so that it would be effective, at least if somebody came into the website, they wouldn't be able to catch it right away.
Well, that's all fair. I was just thinking that, as we do these, as we inform people, that they have, a lot of people, just don't remember, or we take something off. So it'd be nice to at least have areas where you can go to the site. We got plenty of spots on our site where the information you did post could be there for a while, or until it changes.
Right. And
So,
I think when we work on reorganizing the website a little bit, we'll have a little tickler button or something that can lead a person to something like that. I think we need a mechanism to do that. And I have to say that, and we can talk more about this when it's our turn for the weeds on the
right. So-
agenda. I'd like to offer a few ideas.
Yeah, that sounds great. So, no, I just, so you just brought up a point. Are we reworking the site? And, can you share anything on that? That's what it sounded like you were saying.
It's on the list, Ralph, to go back and do some touch up. We're also going to talk about the Poly platform, which should be available to us today, actually. I don't know. I haven't heard from him, but it's supposed to be available for us to look at the download functionality today, according to the email he sent. But so we got to work between the two technologies, because we're moving to the, some of this communication to the app world.
Yeah, that sounds great. Look forward to that update. So that was my only comment, and it sounds like, you've made a terrific effort in getting messages out in a repeated fashion. I was just thinking that, as we build up information, that if that's the case, and we're going to do any, upgrades to our site, that we, include that kind of approach to things. So
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea, Ralph. I mean, we have a number of initiatives that are annual. And so we could, as we look at how to do the site, we can look at, some of the annual things, because we have, pretty much annually we have a fire ban. Pretty much annually we're doing a weed thing. Pretty much annually we're doing no winter parking. So we've got a whole series of things that are probably, I don't know what we'll call them, reminders, annual programs, something. We'll come up with something. I think it's a good idea that we have that stuff there. So when people can be reminded in a brief memo, they can go to the website and look at the winter parking rules, or the, the trash rules, or whatever.
yeah, exactly. And so that's great. That's just an ongoing thing. Terrific. The only other thought, other thing I thought was, I guess, in the same vein, on number 8. So I'm not sure what page that is, but as we're ordering these in number 8, there was some things about the would we consider amending the code to require dogs be on leash at all times? I don't think we ever answered that. So was there any follow-up on that?
No, Ralph, I mean, I haven't, we get the reports from, animal control, and I've been generally pretty diligent about sending them out. I think the latest one I haven't got issued to you all yet. But the data from the animal control folks is that things are pretty calm in Hideout at the moment, but now we're getting into peak season, so we'll see. So I haven't heard any, I haven't had enough, I guess the office hasn't had enough feedback to suggest that we need to amend the code to 100% leash. Now, if the council wants to look at that, if everyone in the council wants to look at that, we can certainly look at that, but
No,
I
I
hadn't heard-
agree. I'm not trying to necessarily move in that direction, but just same thing, where there's newsletters or there's a spot to put things up, maybe on Poly platform at this point, that remind residents to report aggressive animals, that kind of thing. So just good reminders. And if we can keep it posted on our site for a bit, at least during the peak season here, so to speak, that would be useful.
that we can do, Ralph. I think it's a good idea to put a reminder out that, anyone who has issues with aggressive animals can call, Wasatch County Animal Control, and we'll post the number.
And it's really nice to hear that we're getting less of these. That would be a nice trend rather than the other way around.
So,
I have some comments if I could.
sure.
Going back to what Ralph was saying about the weeds, and maybe Carol Custerly will address this. I believe she did send out a link about what weeds are noxious, but like I live in Shoreline 1, and a lot of us were talking that we're not sure in our yard what is weeds and what isn't. I know we want natural growth, but with all the rain that we had in May and June, so many more things have come up this summer. And in my way of thinking, a lot of them look like weeds. So if we could have some kind of photo that would identify the ones that are more prevalent, I think that would be helpful. If they could, if it's possible, maybe use Poly platform for it. I don't know, but a lot of us are confused. Is it a weed, or is it a plant that's not, a plant that they put in that is native? So that was my comment about the weeds. And then for follow-up, we had also talked about, this is still referring back to the minutes, that Thomas was going to make available maps of adjoining properties to Hideout. And I still have yet to see that. And also we had talked about having maps of the vacant parcels in Hideout that could possibly have very small commercial on it. And that hasn't been sent out either. So I'd like to just request that we do follow up with that. That's it.
That's a good one, Carol. I completely lost that one. I just did a summary of all my notes from last several months and sent it out to everyone, and I left that one off. So thanks for that reminder on the maps. So we'll get that on Thomas's to-do list.
Hey,
See, the other
Thomas,
thing-
when you do that, sorry to break in there. Can it be the map? And I think I asked you this as well. Could you also have like a list, like, describing that kind of in almost a small spreadsheet, so that we can go, we have a better description, because sometimes the map doesn't do it justice and we need to go back and forth. Any of the detail, who owns the property, the acreage, that kind of thing. So we kind of just have call it a table and the map. That would be really useful to, I think, us.
Yeah, I can put that together and include a table. I could also maybe put the ownership right on the parcel in the map,
Yep.
so you guys see exactly where it is. That might be
If
the
you,
easiest
yeah,
way.
if you got enough room on the map, if you don't, then,
Okay.
it just becomes a little bit of a table at the bottom or something.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Carol, as far as where you live, because the
HOA. Right.
HOA manages that, so our, the weed team has been in touch with the HOA, the weed companies have been through and inspected. So I don't have the details of their findings, but they are engaged and are taking appropriate action. So if there's things on your property that are weeds, the weed guys are taking care of them.
Okay,
So I would, Carol can overrule me, but I think that's what's going on. And therefore, if it's still alive and on your property, it's probably okay.
I'll have some comments when it's my turn.
All right. Anything else on the follow-up items? Okay, thank you. Public input items. This is where we open up to the public to talk about I'm sorry, I'm switching screens just so I can see the hands raised. So this is where we open up. Any member of the public who wants to ask questions is welcome to raise their hand by using the raise your hand function in Zoom, and we will call on you if you've got something that's you need to talk about that isn't on the agenda. There's a hand. So Brett.
Yes, thank you. And not that the town can completely solve this, but I believe that the building permit requirements require dumpsters and I'll call it sanitation facility, a porta potty, to be on construction sites. I know I had to go through that process with my project. I'm getting a lot of various garbage in my construction dumpster and a lot of other people using the porta potty. There's a couple other projects near mine, near the corner of Longview and Lasso, that don't have those types of facilities yet. They're still under construction. So I guess I just asked the town to consider passing that info along to the proper party that enforces the building code. Because I've just been getting, chandeliers, TV boxes. I've returned some stuff to some people who have dropped unbroken down Amazon boxes with the labels still on them. I've returned their property to them, but I think we just need to look at a little bit more enforcement for those dumpsters.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
It's about $800 a dumpster to empty mine, and I probably emptied one for the community.
Yeah, that's not fair to
appreciate that.
Do all. So after I drop my trash this evening, I'll get this taken care of.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Just kidding.
The other thing I wanted to mention was, I think it would be great if the town could possibly post some images of some of the more noxious weeds. I want to, even though my properties have been sprayed, they still come up, and I think it would just help educate folks to what is and what isn't the noxious weeds. And I don't know them all by heart. I know a few, and I try to take care of those throughout the year. But that'd be really helpful. So, thank you.
Okay, Tim, since I noticed you're on, could you please work with the Public Works guys and make sure that that all the jobs have their own dumpsters and porta potties and so forth, so that we don't. And unfortunately, my experience, Brett, is a lot of times it's community members, as you noted by the Amazon labels, are using the nearest dumpster. So I think we probably need to do a communication about that, to remind. And that might be a good first one for our app, is that those dumpsters are not public dumpsters. They are associated with, people's property, and you're not, just because you happen to get a very large box today, doesn't mean you can use their dumpster across the street to put it in.
Yeah, the construction acknowledgement agreement requires that the dumpster be covered, and that would help neighbors not contribute.
Yeah, and most of them are only covered for transit, unfortunately, because they're
Yeah.
putting big stuff in all the time.
Yeah,
so.
we're getting a lot of plastics and garbage out into the public areas and into the vegetation because
Yeah.
we aren't enforcing that.
So Tim, I'll have you take a look at that. I did talk with our friends at Dear Waters. I know they've done some work on cleaning up in there. Before I left town, they were working on getting a lot of the rubbish up. So I haven't been down to the shoreline phase 2 in a while. So, but I will let Tim put that on the list for his guys.
I'll just say I work very hard to clean up the area around my construction project. You cannot get a covered dumpster from the companies. The covering that they use in transit is actually part of the hauling truck.
Uh-huh.
So that's a very difficult
Yeah, the big
item to comply with.
don't have, the big skip pans don't have lids. That's right.
Yeah.
So maybe our acknowledgement agreement isn't realistic in that request.
So let's look at that too, please, Tim.
Okay, Mayor, I'll definitely get into that.
Thank you. All right, any other public input? Okay, I'm going to close public input and go back to the agenda. And we'll move to agenda items. So the first one, we had a recommendation, a couple of letters from a couple of our residents suggesting that we put a reminder out about appropriate uses, particularly of outside water, given the drought situation. I think that's a great idea. I think we should do a reminder about that. And get everybody out there. I know everybody knows it, but it doesn't mean that sometimes we have a tendency to say, well, I don't really use that much. That's not mine. Mine's not going to make a difference. So I think it's a great idea that we suggest that people be very conscious of their use of irrigation water given the situation. And you can almost see the Jordanelle dropping day by day. So thoughts from council beyond doing something like that?
Well, do we have any guidelines on this that we can, kind of lever off of?
We don't, Ralph. We don't have any, there's nothing in our code that describes the usage of irrigation water in any way.
I didn't think so. So I don't know what other towns do, especially at this point, but you would think going forward, the state and the counties and us would all have some kind of guidelines. Would that be a useful thing? Maybe we can put some, reminders up about general, and then maybe we should look into what anyone else is doing, just briefly.
We have historically been piggybacking off the state guidelines, but we can certainly have Cameron or probably do some looking at what other codes are and give us some feedback on that.
Yeah, and actually Cameron, in preparation for tonight's meeting, did a little bit of research. So
Okay.
I'd like him to comment. He's available.
Okay, great.
Yes, currently JSSD recommends only watering twice a week, but it is a recommendation. It's not mandatory. And just in looking around some of the other municipalities, I found a fair number that limit the time of day that you can water outside to avoid the evaporation during the hot part of the day. And then there are also many that regulate the day of the week or how many times during the week. So I can certainly put together, sort of a staff report and a draft ordinance and circulate that if the town wants to look at doing that.
I think that'd be a great idea, Cameron. That'd be terrific.
So generally, the most of the municipalities that I looked at, they restrict even addresses to 3 days of the week and odd to 3 days of the week, and then they exclude residential use for 1 day of the week, and that's when the schools and businesses and others water. But and then the time of day is generally only watering between the hours of 6 p.m. and 9 a.m. It is roughly the framework for that. Any other suggestions or restrictions, limits you'd like to see in that?
The only thing that comes to mind is that for reasons that I don't quite understand, the golf course seems to do a lot of watering during the midday times. And I don't know what we can do about that, but I'll let you and Polly take a look at that and see if we have any control there.
Okay.
Put in drought restrictions. Summit County has recently done that, and it temporarily raises the rates for lower water usage. That's something we might consider.
And Cameron, are these in your research, are these actual ordinances, and they're, permanent ordinances, not just reflecting, maybe the need at the time? My guess is we're not going to really go, doesn't look like drought relief is anytime soon, even in the next couple of years. So I'm just curious, in your research, are these permanent ordinances for the town?
So about half of them are. The other half are resolutions or ordinances that weren't necessarily codified. So there are some municipalities that just simply have language that states that the municipality can restrict watering as needs or demands on the system require or supplies are restricted. Others specifically mention the drought. And then those that are permanent do list, specific days of the week and times that you can water every year. And so they're permanent.
Thanks.
Well, let's let the Cameron do a little bit of work. We'll let the staff debate how we want to, I think Jan brought up some good points as well. I like the idea of a more generic statement that says that we have the right to regulate usage depending on, water availability, as opposed to fixing it to Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays throughout the year or whatever. But let us noodle on that a little bit, and we'll come back with a proposal. If that suits council.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me.
Sounds good to me.
Good.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to number 2, discussion and consideration of adopting an ordinance on dark skies lighting. The last time we talked about this, we wanted to do a lighting study. Tim and Dan got the light meters and did some work. So I'll let Tim talk a little bit about what they learned from that, because they did it in winter when the reflective ground was even, at its highest because it was snow on the ground. So I'll let Tim talk about what he learned from that, because I guess the council wanted to know, how bad off we were. So if you would, Tim, I know it's kind of rusty. Hopefully you had a chance to do a little bit of remembering before tonight.
Yeah. No, so thank you, Mayor and Council. And listen, we were excited to do it. And I know me and Thomas are going to go out here again we're working on a time to go out, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, to kind of take some readings and just kind of get some updates. But, I'm not going to take credit for it. Dan did most of the work. And so I just wanted to make sure that I got that out there. But, we found out that a lot of our places are in compliance. I think the things that, obviously that we, the meter showed that we may not be in compliance is of course the appropriate street lighting. And so, we got pretty close to some residences underneath some eaves, and found that they were close to being out of compliance, but yet they were not. So in general, the whole town actually was under the dark sky compliance if we were to enact it as of today. We made some changes at our public works building and to where that building is a more dark sky compliant friendly. And so we've been proactive as at least from the city standpoint in regards to doing that. So I think, like I said, the biggest thing is we probably need to figure the best way and a good balance between safety for our street lighting. And when people, if they choose to walk at night, put their pets or just go for a walk, kind of just balance that safety issue in regards to having a night sky ordinance. And so there was probably only one place that I remember kind of back towards Rustler that was out of compliance, and it could have just been the lamp or the shade, I guess, for lack of a better word, for people who weren't there, was tilted up the wrong way, and so kind of shone a little bit more instead of being directed downwardly like it's supposed to be. So overall, it was a great learning experience for everybody, and again, I think moving forward, me and Thomas will have some great meter reading locations again in the next couple weeks, and I'll be definitely glad to let everyone know what we find out then. So I'm available if you have any questions for me.
Thanks, Tim. Council, let me just add one thing that I would say the number one issue non-compliant issue that is observed is, although the light output is not above what we're targeting from a meter reading, is we have a number of external fixtures that have the sides of the light bulb exposed, and the code that we're looking to implement requires that the bulbs be shielded on the sides, and that so that all the light is fully directed down. So even though they're not super bright, we do have a number of outdoor fixtures on homes that you can basically see the shape of the light bulb. So that if we adopt this as written, those folks will have to get notices, and sometime in the next, I think it's 5 years, have to convert those fixtures to something that doesn't expose the size of a light bulb.
And Mayor, this is Thomas. If I could just jump in, you're absolutely right. That's where most of the retrofitting will take place, and that is to not see the sides of a bulb, to see the sides of a light emitting diode, whatever you end up having. And so I think our timeline, we had initially talked about 2 years or 5 years, and I think we settled on a 3-year timeline to get it resolved. Just so council is aware, I think Tim did a great job of outlining where we currently sit with regard to light metering. And again, we are going to do it one night, hopefully in early August, so that we can get summer readings. But summer readings should be better than winter readings just because of the lack of snow and reflectivity. So again, our numbers were pretty good when we got under eaves and things like that. Yeah, the numbers, of course, went a little bit higher out of compliance, but generally roads, rights of ways, we're right on the line. We're in pretty good compliance. I should let everyone know that we did receive a couple of questions and inquiries from Rustler, and maybe Glenn Seymour is on tonight. I'm not sure. Oh, I think he is actually. They had some questions because their lights in Rustler are, to the mayor's point, they're the kind of lights that do expose the sides of the bulbs. And so that would be a retrofit for Rustler. I think Shoreline may have some issues. And so Glenn had a few questions for us. And we responded to him. He's on tonight. He may have some questions in addition for you all. But one of the questions he did ask, and it was a good question. It was a good concept. What about string lights? You know how some people kind of hang those string lights? They're just really basically those small bulbs, and they kind of hang them on patios or above patios, so they get a little bit of light if they're barbecuing or hanging out. We don't really have anything in the ordinance that addresses those. We do have exemptions in the ordinance, but those aren't exempted. So it may be something the council wants to consider, maybe exempting those lights and maybe putting them, maybe recommending that they're allowed, for example, except for the period between 12 a.m. and 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. We've done that with some other lighting, but it might be worth incorporating that because some people do use those. They're kind of a soft light. They're a nice light, but technically, because they're not protected on the sides, they would be out of compliance. So it may be an issue worth discussing.
Good point, Thomas. I thought we had already covered that because I thought we had. I guess we talked about it.
Holiday lighting.
We talked about holiday lights, and
we did do it for holiday lighting. But
all right, so these are holiday lights, but not on a holiday.
That's right. So if you consider these holiday lights, you're right. If people use them outside of the holiday, and people do, we might provide an exception for them.
Thomas, I would agree with that. I think, there's such a low lumens output. I think it would be a good idea to allow them year round, not just in the holiday lighting section.
I agree.
Yeah, because I think that's it's a good lifestyle kind of thing. And I would also agree if we're requiring that lights are off between midnight and 6 a.m., at the very least, then those should go off then too.
Okay.
I agree with Chris on that.
Okay. So we can make that modification and add a section on the
and Mayor, I think probably put that down in exemptions. It's a few pages down under 10.16.06, I think. Yep, there are the exemptions.
Yeah.
So we could put a note in there for kind of temporary string lighting, despite the fact they're just bulbs, not protected on the sides, allowed maybe under cover, under a deck, on a porch, and subject to the 12 p.m. to 6 a.m. shut off.
Hey, Thomas, should we describe them as such as they are in the holiday lighting section?
Probably, yeah. I'll give wattage lumens and kind of talk about string lights.
Yeah, string lights, basically, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. So I did another rereading of this to refresh my memory, and I do have a couple of things to comment on. So Mayor, can you go back to section 10.16.02, the purpose? It's near the beginning. So there's a mention of, thank you. So there's a mention here. Okay, part 4. It says, in support of Dark Skies, events will be held 2 times a year to educate our community. I know this came from the International Dark Sky, recommendations, but in order for us to become certified, we have to do that. I don't know whether or not we're committing to be certified or not. So as much as I support, having events to educate community members, I think it shouldn't be will, maybe it should be, or shall, and maybe it should be may have events to be coordinated, because I don't think we've made that commitment yet to that level of wanting to be certified. In other words, I don't want to.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. I agree, Chris, because I don't want to put in code that we're not going to be following. So
exactly right. So I would just suggest we change that we may have events to educate the public, and we may pursue certification as a Dark Skies community.
Yeah.
And I'm going to add this now, and it's going to come up later when we talk about the emergency operation plan. I think we've been counseled not to say town of Hideout anymore, that we're supposed to refer to ourselves as Hideout, since we're getting
No.
too big to be a town.
No, the town of Hideout is what we are, and we can continue to call ourselves a town of Hideout even if we're a city.
Well, and we haven't officially changed status. I
No,
think
we haven't.
Lieutenant Governor needs to recertify us as a city. So yeah, Jan can maybe speak to it more.
Yeah, we have a commitment from the state to give us our official certificate, and I haven't seen it yet, but it will be there very shortly, so I promised.
But as I said, that we then get to have a discussion about that. But even though you are classified a Class 5 city, you do not have to. You can still call yourself a town of Hideout. So that's, I don't want to spend money on new letterhead and signage and everything else unless it's required by law. I don't think there's anything wrong with being the town of Hideout, even if we are a small city. But we can talk about that when that comes across. But just know that just because you're a city, you don't have to call yourself the city of. So I don't know, Chris, if that helps you or not, but.
That's definitely a discussion item. I think it could be a lively discussion about what, our identity as we get larger. So I think that's a good thing. I'm just thinking we don't want to spend money going back and re-editing these items if we want to take town of out, that's all. I'm just trying to get it, get this, get any of the things that we might adopt, so that we don't have to go back too soon and re-edit them all. That's all. So maybe that should be a discussion at some point, Mayor, about what we're going to call ourselves going forward. And I would agree. I would hate to invest in a bunch of, marketing materials, letterhead, logo, that are rebranding. We're not ready. I don't think we're ready to rebrand anything yet. Okay, I'll move on to my next thing, and this might be also a discussion item. It has to do with the holiday lighting period. In this document, it has it going from December 1st to March 31st as the holiday lighting period. I think, as I recall, way back when this was first put together, there was some desire to stay in alignment with what was already in being enforced by the HOA going through the 31st of March. But I would want to ask folks, is this the right period for holiday lighting? Is December 1st too late? After Thanksgiving is March 31st. That's pretty late also for holiday lighting.
I think it's pretty late too.
So I just wanted to have a discussion and see if that's really the time period that we would like to permit holiday lighting.
Yeah, I think this one is wide open for discussion. So you are all aware, most of Park City, I think the holiday lighting is now November 15th to April 15th, and it's really tied to the ski resorts, quite frankly, right? Late November, late November to April 12th-ish is roughly ski season. And I think that's why the code there tends to go November 15th to April 15th. But this was put in to, these dates were included because of the HOA, just so everybody's clear. To Chris's point, you're right. That's why.
I know I like to sometimes put my lights up on Thanksgiving, right? That's not December 31st.
That's why yeah.
And then, I like to get them down before March 31st, or at least turn them off so nobody knows I haven't taken them down yet. But, I'm
sorry, Chris.
Yeah. I'm glad you're amused by that. So, But I just, what does the council think and what do we think the community would want?
Do it what Park City does, November 15th through April 15th. But honestly, I don't think we need to really spend a lot of time on this.
So do you don't think holiday lighting contributes a lot to light pollution and the light trespass, et cetera?
Only if their last name is Griswold.
Okay.
And it is worth noting that even holiday lighting does have to be turned off between midnight and 6. Yeah.
Okay, well, does anybody else in the council have an opinion? Trying to represent themselves and their the rest of the folks in town?
I'm not sure I'm representing anyone but myself at this point, Chris, because I haven't detailed anything out or talked to anybody exactly on these timeframes. But I think November 15th is very fair, as to your point. People want to do things in November. I don't know about the April 15th or the March 31st. Is that too long? I mean, what are we accomplishing by having holiday lights after, say, March 1st or something like that? So
Right.
I would probably err more towards that end on the latter side and earlier on the front end. So that's my 2 cents. I don't know. Maybe we should have had a survey on this.
So can I suggest that we can do it we can certainly have the option to modify this code, but my sense of living here for 7 years now is that we don't have any significant abuse in this space. So we maybe spend a lot of time talking about something that isn't really an issue.
Well, Mayor, it is a little bit of an issue. I'll tell you why. In the winter, unfortunately, I have to work and then I end up walking my dog after dark. I can tell you, despite my, trying to use my headlamp that allows me not to lose my night vision, every time I walk past a house that's so lit up with those white lights everywhere, it's really bright, really, really bright, and doesn't seem to fit in with our natural environment very well. And so I am looking for some restrictions on that so that it doesn't just go on, month after month throughout the winter and just keep going. So when in fact, we don't have to be aligned with the ski season. We're not near the resorts. We are a community of people who, live here or come visit here. And, it'd be nice to keep things a little more tranquil and darker longer.
So what are you suggesting, Chris? I don't understand. We're the code here that we're proposing is December 1st to March 31st. So that's 4 months out of 12, basically.
Yeah, that's a lot.
If you think that's too much, then you're suggesting you'd like to see it trimmed back? Is that what you're suggesting?
I really like what Ralph suggested, November 15th, adopting that, general standard and borrowing that from, our neighboring communities, but then having them turn off sooner than March 31st. Maybe we can go to March 1st or something like that.
I mean, that's fine. So November 15th to 3/1 is
3/1 is
suggested.
fairly arbitrary, so,
Other council members have an issue with the proposed code being modified to November 15th to March 1st? Anybody think of a reason why that shouldn't be the suggested change?
No, I like that date frame. I think that's good.
It's fine. Next item.
What about running it through President's Weekend, which would be the end of February? I guess that's close to March 1st. Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay.
Mayor,
All
I
right,
don't know
Tom.
if comment, but Brett Rutter has his hand up if you are.
Sure, why not? It's a free for all anyway, so. Go ahead, Brett.
I just, I'm really confused here because there's support for allowing string lights, which is what holiday lights are.
I
but
agree.
there's- And these are going to contradict each other. So, you know, I like the holiday lights when I walk at night because they actually provide light. There's not much light in Hideout. So I actually like them when I walk at night. I think we're contradicting ourselves in this discussion of making an exemption to allow string lights, which one answer to Rustler would be to just replace all those front porch lights with string lights because then they'd be allowed unshielded. But then we want to limit holiday lights. I don't understand. Very contradictory to me, just listening to this.
Brett, we'll get a little more specific about what string lights are. String lights are not a string of lights that you put on your house for holidays. They're like a particular type of decorative garden light. It's not a holiday light. It's not super bright. They're actually quite dim. So we'll be specific so that there's no confusion about that. Whereas the holiday light.
I feel that what we're getting into is very individual specific preferences.
Yep.
And if we want to take a poll of the community, that'd be great because there are a lot of people that do view this as a winter sports recreation community, even though it's not near a ski resort per se. I just think this is getting like very individual specific preference. And that's from a community member, which all of you represent me as a community member. Thank you.
I think our goal here is to ensure that we're having as little light pollution as possible. We are acknowledging that because we're by a ski resort and we're a vacation community and we like to celebrate, that we are going to allow a bunch of bright holiday lights. It's kind of the thing that happens around Park City. So we're acknowledging that, but we're trying to differentiate ourselves here in Hideout. You know, to see what we as a community want. And, you know, we don't live in Park City. We're not in Summit County. Just want to remind everybody of that. And, you know, this is a kind of an identity thing for us as far as what we're trying to accomplish. So I think the spirit, as well as the letter of this lighting ordinance is that we really want to do everything we can to try to not have any more light than we need here.
Well, I really do like the lights that the town has at the entrance. To me, it's a huge safety thing. It's a very good way for me to help guide my guests into where the turnoff is.
No, this is Brett.
This is a council
community citizen.
It's a council dialogue, Brett. I'm going to have to. We
Okay.
heard you.
All right.
Let us process it. Okay. Please.
I think just to kind of redirect, I think we were talking about dates first, you know, trying to hone in on the holiday lighting dates, since holiday lighting is such an important thing for so many people. And that's where we were before we got sidetracked.
I think Brett brings up a good point about, you know, getting clarity between what are holiday lights and what are garden lights, or, you know, that kind of thing. Because a lot of people just take strings of Christmas lights and wrap around their porch railing and, you know, on their deck, and use them throughout the year. So we'll have to do some education, make sure that we're
And Mayor, I don't know, if you may not be taking public input. I know Glenn Seymour is the person that I spoke to from Rustler, has their hand up. Maybe they have a better definition for those kinds of lights, but I do agree we'll have to be pretty definitive.
Okay, why not? Glenn, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And Thomas and I discussed this a couple days ago, and as far as the string lights, and we have about a dozen homes that have those types of lights. They're used for their entertainment spaces, balconies, and porches. And it just wasn't addressed, and so I asked the question about that. I think our intent would be, and it would agree with what Chris was saying, is that those would be lights that would be only allowed on while you're using that entertainment space and not to be kept up. And no one does that. They turn them on when they're out sitting out on their porch or sitting on their balcony, and then they turn them off when they go inside. And I think that intent and that use would meet all needs.
Agreed.
Yeah, we'll have
Okay.
to find some language, Thomas, we'll have to find some language to be able to describe that adequately so that it's clear.
That's right.
So, Thomas, I know you're a busy guy, and you've also you've also had the privilege of being miserable with COVID recently.
I've emerged.
Yeah, me too, but man, it stinks. Anyway, do you think we can clean this up based on the comments from tonight and have something for next month for approval?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I can pull together some pretty tight definitions. And even if we need to start getting into some small graphics or images just for clarification, we can incorporate that into this document.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thomas, you know what, there's a light over at Deer Waters. There are the lights that are on either side of the driveways over there. I don't know if you've looked at those. I wonder if they are in compliance, because for the full cutoff fixture, no lumens elements are supposed to be visible, and I think they're visible, but maybe you could, work with Daniel or Tim or whomever to just take a look at that
We'll do that.
and make sure we have I think this document has drawings of many different types of lights. And so we can kind of, see if there's in the acceptable or unacceptable light pictures, if they are similar, so we can try to illustrate, your findings with that.
Okay.
And then the last thing is, and I really don't want to prolong this, but I really do want to point it out because it's in here. So 10-1606, Mayor, if you would go to that section.
Yep.
And this is something we haven't dealt with yet, but, and it has to do with the outdoor recreation facilities lighting. And, I'm not a lighting expert, but I did a Google search, and on in the section F, which is outdoor recreational facilities, being exempt from the lumen cap and shielding, but they have to comply with the 3,000 degree Kelvin temperature requirement. I did look that up, and if we were to have like a sports field or some athletic field, I don't know if that 3,000 degrees Kelvin temperature is high enough from what I looked at. So Thomas, can we take a look at that? Because I took a look and it was more like 5,000 to 6,500 for a sports field, if we should ever have one. And again, I'd just like to, if we have an opportunity to get that right the first time, get the right Kelvin temperature in there. So for those folks who aren't lighting specialists, which includes me, I had to look up what that meant. And it really is kind of the degree of warmness of a light, or at least that's how I'm summarizing it. And so that's kind of a warm white light. But if you're on a playing field, I don't know if we're ever going to light any courts that we might have in the future, or if we're going to light any, grassy fields or fields that we might have in the future. This, you might not be enough for a sporting activity.
Yeah, I can take a look at that. You're right, Chris. 3,000 is considered a pretty warm light. It's kind of middle of the road. If you get down in the low 2000s, it gets to a more kind of yellow, kind of orange light, like high pressure sodium vapor, the old highway lighting you used to see. Right. And if you go above, say, 3,500 into the 4,500, 5,000 range, that's kind of that bluish white light. It's almost like we sometimes it's referred to as like alien ship light. It's really bright blue light. When LEDs first came out, they hovered in that temperature, and then they got better and better and warmer. But you're right, for a sports court, it might need to be higher than 3,000. I'm not sure, but I'll do the research.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I won't torture you with anything else, Mayor and everyone. Thank you.
Anything else from anyone on the council on this? Otherwise, we're going to move this to I'm gonna move this to next month, hopefully with a final doc out at least a week before the meeting so that we can all be comfortable signing, voting on an ordinance.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think this is pretty good with a few of those changes we talked about. It's going to be even better next time. So, I'd like to see us possibly get to a vote.
And Thomas, will you have been able to do this next, a survey of lighting before the next meeting? Will that take place between now and our next meeting?
Yeah, we can go out and do the assessment, whether it's me or Dan or Tim or a combination. Yeah, we can definitely get that done. Yeah.
That'd be great. So we have a little bit more data for, even as you said, it probably is not going to increase. It'll probably decrease in the summer.
Yes. We'll do that.
Okay. Thank you. Next item is update on transportation regional planning. Jan, are you leading that?
Yes, Carol Hazelton, you're welcome to join in at any time. Carol has been very active with our transportation meetings, and we've coordinated, and she has arranged for others to attend. I'll just give you a brief summary. UDOT updates its regional transportation plan every 5 years, and we're going through that process again now. And Carol Hazelton and I were in attendance at a recent meeting, and we're able to actually sit down with UDOT Region 2 members and discuss adaptations that we would like to the plan, and discuss our trails plan and things that we would like them to put in over the next, the plan looks out 20 years. And so we had some good discussions on that. Transportation is very important, especially right now. I'm not sure if you're aware, but probably for the last maybe year, I have been attending MAG meetings. It was MAG hired a professional transportation consultant. That was actually in 2019. And we collectively, with members of the region, sat down and contributed to what we wanted to see in a plan. And then MAG has now created a RPO with actual bylaws, and each mayor or the mayor's designee is given a voting right under those bylaws. So there are also meetings happening as Park City Transit turned into High Valley Transit. There are just several things happening right now. And talking to Carol, we thought that it should become a new committee, a transit committee. And Carol has agreed to move from the infrastructure committee and head the committee on transit. And we just feel like there's more organization that we can make sure that we're at every meeting that makes sense to attend, to get our plans in at the various levels of organization. So there's another meeting coming up next week, and we'll continue to organize as we go while we're attending these meetings. And we'll on the next newsletter ask for members who would like to be on the transit committee, so we can, get representation at a level that we need. And there are a lot of good connections that we can make. And it is very complicated for the town of Hideout because we're UDOT Regional 2 and Wasatch County is UDOT Region 3. So it's almost like we need to attend more meetings to make sure that we get included in the right areas. And Carol, do you have any other comments or?
Just a few comments. I've been attending as many transportation type meetings as possible. So every 3 months, we have an interlocal meeting, and they do discuss transit a lot. However, they seem to focus on the bypass road through Heber and issues with Highway 40 and Highway, I believe it's 189 that goes down through Provo Canyon. They don't seem to care a whole lot about 248, which is closest to us. Jan and I did fill out, they gave us a form to fill out about what are the issues that we have regionally. So both of us filled it out. I pretty much focused on things with 248 and the fact that we needed public transportation. We have the bus that goes from Camas to Park City. It passes us all the time. It doesn't stop and hide out. And Carolyn Rodriguez did say that, oh yes, it does stop and hide out. It stops at the low income housing, but there's no parking there for us. So one of the things that I really talked to the people about was if we do have some type of regional transportation, we need parking. I mean, so it's like, okay, we could take a bus. I think a lot of people would be willing to take a bus, but where are they going to park to get on the bus? And then when they get off the bus so they can get home. So that was one of the things I talked to people about. There's just a lot of different issues. We talked about the fact that there are trails that are all around. And I think Jan, you and Thomas were trying to work on getting a trail alongside 248. I don't know where you are with that, but I think that's something we should look at for either walking or bicycling, to connect us with both Park City and Camas. So there's a lot of things that we are talking about. And yes, we do need members on the committee. I do have one member, Rachel Cooper will represent Planning Commission on the committee, but we need just members at large.
Also, Wasatch County recently passed the transit tax, so there will be money coming in, and we should represent our needs to Wasatch County. So that will be money that we can put behind a plan that filters in through High Valley Transit.
Carol, do you think it's possible we could recruit maybe a committee member from the Deer Mountain Affordable Community? I don't know who, but.
I mean, it's a possibility, Chris. I have no problem with it, but they do have transportation there. The bus does stop there. So
sure, it stops there. I don't know if it meets their needs, right? I did remember. Yeah, go ahead.
It has very limited, it's basically designed to be a commuter transit. And so it's like a couple hours in the morning and then hours in the evening for the return, and not so much during the middle of the day.
Or in the evenings, because people do work different shifts, not business hours.
I don't know what's available when you get off from the restaurants and need to go out our way.
Exactly. Maybe High Valley Transit has a solution there. I don't know if they're going to operate.
Well, I tell you what, Chris, that brings up a really good point. I think one of the things we could ask the committee to do, Carol, if you're willing, is let's see if we can identify what goes through Hideout and when, as at least a starting point. And then we can figure out, if we gave them a bus stop at the state park entrance, for example, a place can't do parking yet necessarily, but we can certainly think about a place where they could, pull over and pick people up across from the Deer Mountain Affordable Community, for example.
That
I don't
brings
know.
up another issue, crossing that highway.
I'm well aware.
Right. So
that's for sure, Carol.
Right. So, okay.
Yeah. So there's it's not I don't think it's an easy solution here. Maybe we're not enough critical mass out here to count, but we'd still like to try to look for try to plan for the future of transit that would include hideout, not, and, include the people that are using it to go to work, but also in the future, you guys are probably, we're all painfully aware that someday the day skier parking is probably going to go away, right? So how do you get into Park City, without using a car? Those are, problems that are regional problems. And so we want to make sure that, I just want to make sure that hideout is being, not being ignored while those are being discussed.
Well, I think from what I,
with Richardson Flat parking area, there's so many spaces there. I know that Park City, do they think that they have now annexed it? Have they annexed it? But I mean, it seems that they could run a bus through there. At least there's parking, and at least it keeps the cars away from Park City. So
Sure. Of course, that sounds right, Carol, but just.
Can we not fix that here tonight, guys? Just to keep track of where we are. So we've agreed on the committee.
Okay.
We're gonna do some work to gather them. We can ask them to do some work, but let's not start solving it here tonight.
Okay.
There's
Well,
definitely a
the only-
dovetail. I just want to add, I'm sorry, Ralph, did I interrupt you?
no, go ahead, Chris, you're, so, and I'll just finish, I have one comment.
Okay, I'll be real quick. This definitely dovetails with what the post committee does when we're talking about, having a transportation trail along 248. So we'll keep in touch, Carol, about that. I know the post committee, that's part of our plan. We want that spine trail. We just have not yet gotten any traction that I'm aware of to actually make it happen.
Yeah, the only comment I was going to add was so I've read some early reports, and it just seems to, the points that we were making before, it's left hideout off, where it's like we're an appendage out here, and all the transportation designed for the future, incorporates basically Heber to Park City.
Right.
So I mean, we're taxpayers as well. And it just shows that, I think the design so far, the future looking roadmap that I read just leaves us off. And if we're not in the game, so to speak, we're never going to get anything out here. So what I'd like to say, so Carol, what would help us, and Jan, with me, what are the latest proposals? Can you bring those to the table? So, to the council, so we're better informed as what the proposals are on the table. That would be useful for us to just get better informed, because I'm not sure I'm reading all the documents that are appropriate. You guys are probably much better informed. So could you share that with us as we go through this process?
Yes, and Carol will be heading the committee, and I think it's good to have one spokesperson who can then utilize the information that comes back from these various entities or meetings. And the RPO is actually like an advisory committee to UDOT. So it acts like a planning commission, and it has two layers. So, there are various entities, and coordinating them together is a lot of work. And I think it's important work, as you mentioned, and because geographically we are complicated in Summit County, and yet we're part of Wasatch County. I think this committee is very appropriate. But yes, we'll be making more frequent updates.
Yeah, what would be useful, Jan, is maybe getting, like, when are the votes coming up? Like if they're voting on the next proposal, meaning the Transportation Planning Committee that crosses Wasatch County into Summit, who makes that vote? So, and when? So make sure that we're, involved at the right times in the right ways.
Absolutely. And we don't have a list of those because everybody's storming and forming right now. So this is a great time to be getting in.
Yeah, well, thanks for your work. Appreciate it.
And thanks to Carol for volunteering to take this on. Really do appreciate it, Carol. I know it's important to you, and I do appreciate you stepping up for that.
Okay.
Okay. If there's nothing else on transit, then thank you for you, Jan and Carol, for your report and all the great dialogue. And let's move on to another Carol Custerly, helping us with the weed process update.
Thanks, Mayor. We already talked about the ways that we communicated and noticed the citizens and property owners of Hideout on this weed issue. One thing that I learned from your comments was that in spite of the fact that I sent the Utah field guide with almost every communication, it takes maybe a little bit more patience to open that guide and see what those noxious weeds look like, because there are wonderful illustrations and pictures, and you can spot them right away in Hideout if you just go into the field guide and look. So I think for next year, what we could do is isolate those that are in Hideout, actually start early with a newsletter and show pictures of what those look like so that people can easily identify them. So that was something I learned from listening to your conversation. I would just like to briefly cover with you our activities to this point. 2 weeks ago, a team of us decided to do our review before we sent our abatement notices out. I took care of all of the phases of Hideout Canyon, including Forevermore Court. Greenleaf took care of the Holmes properties and some of our properties in large parcels on the east side of 248. Kathleen took care of Soaring Hawk. I took care of Golden Eagle. And Greenleaf took care of the Hideout properties and parcels that Hideout owns, along with Holmes. So we divided our efforts and spent many, many hours for a couple of days reviewing all of those properties. And indeed, there is increased infestation in Hideout, and it's getting to the point where it's going to be pretty serious if we don't grab it by the tail here. So we sent out 260 notices of abatement, including individual property owners, developers, HOAs, parcel owners, Homes, Western States Ventures, Claim, GCD, Mustang. We sent a letter. After that, we gave them 3 days for the mailing and 10 days for them to follow through on the notice. So, so far I have responded personally to 150 emails and directed people on what they need to do to comply. Because some of the people received their notices later because they were traveling or it went from one address to another address. They didn't receive the abatement notice on time. So as long as they had their treatment scheduled, then I gave them compliance because we just had such a rush. Now, Greenleaf is handling the majority of these, and they seem to be becoming quite efficient in being able to send estimates and contract with our owners and our property on our property to get this taken care of. So right now I am estimating that we have approximately 100 non-compliant. That is, they have not responded to the town in any way to on the abatement notice. And I don't know if Cameron is still with us or not. Is he?
Yep.
This might be a question for Cameron or Polly. Our town ordinance is written such that it doesn't really say that we have, after we've done the abatement notice, we don't really have to tell them if they do not comply and don't answer, we don't have to tell them that we're going to come and spray. That we can just, and I've talked to Cameron about this, I said, so after that, we can just start spraying when they've passed the due date. And he said, yes, you can. You can start spraying and send them the bill.
Yeah, just a little clarification. The notice actually is the one that informs them that that is what will happen. So they
Right.
Notice.
Right. Okay, great. I don't have a problem with that, but I do think that we need to be careful about what we start doing for Mustang Development and Community Preservation Association, because those are so far this season our two largest out of compliance organizations. GCD is responding well, Claim is responding well, Homes is responding well. We have several parcel owners who have larger parcels who have responded well. The HOAs have not responded very well. Todd Hollow wanted a map of where their required area was, and I sent that to them and haven't heard from them since. So we may have to hunt a couple of these large property owners down. But as far as individual lot owners, I don't see any problem with starting to treat. So as soon as I finish a few more responses on people who have communicated back with us since the notice, I will be able to, and I'm hoping to do this tomorrow, to form a list that we could give to Greenleaf in order to start their treatment of those who are in non-compliance. This morning on my way to work, I drove through Overlook Village because we received a letter from Community Preservation Association's law firm setting us straight on not calling our properties, our homes that are on common property, homes that would be treated by the HOA. They said we need to describe them as envelopes on PUDs. So I've written an email that I'm waiting for you to approve, Cameron, that thanks them for helping us with our descriptions of the properties and thanking them for their treatment in Overlook Village, but also inquiring of them about the remaining properties that CPA has jurisdiction over, which would be all of the other phases of Hideout Canyon, and ask them to report back to me so that they have compliance on those properties. So Cameron, I'd love to hear from you on that. I did, going back, I did drove through Overlook Village today. Many of the properties look good and have been treated, but none of the hillsides between the levels of housing and the streets have been treated. The same thing with Shoreline Phase 1. Dory's been good to communicate with me, but her I think she's doing Utah Weed and Seed, or an organization similar to that. And they also have the same problem, lack of treatment behind the units on the hills. And those infestations are quite serious. So I have.
So Carol, I think we have to be careful because, for example, the downhill side of Shoreline Phase 1 is actually a lot of that is Mustang land, not GCD land.
Yeah, yes, and I have printed out several maps this year and tried to designate what plats belong to what areas. So when I've given those out to Greenleaf and described them in the abatement notices. I probably need to be more aware of that because, yes, I am aware of that. But
Okay.
on the streets higher up, the infestations are pretty bad right behind the units. I found in ordinance 21-0-05 that we need perhaps to think about some amendments on section 5.04.110 standards for weed control. In section B, it says that weeds that are rototilled, disked, or removed by the root must be buried under the soil, removed from the property, or composted. So I talked with Quentin Lewis on the Wasatch. He's head of the Wasatch Weed Board, and asked him about this and said, if a thistle has a flower, can it reproduce? And he said, yes. If you fall a thistle to the ground, if you cut it down and leave it on the ground, it will seed if it's got a flower on it. It doesn't have to look like it's going to seed. So I thought that burying something like that or composting it would be a great way to work more seeds into the soil and increase our problems. So just a suggestion that you might want to look at redescribing what should be done with weeds. Most of our weeds need to either be removed or treated, one or the other. That's just my input on that. An example would be that I had a number of people communicate with me after the abatement notice that said, why are you telling me that I have weeds? Because Greenleaf treated my property the second week of June. Well, we looked at the properties the third or fourth week of June, and they had all kinds of new growth on them. So this is one of the biggest challenges I see to this point is that we have continuous growth from about the middle of April clear until the end of June, and new weeds are coming up all the time. And so multiple treatments really are going to be needed for bad infestations, and we do mention that in our letter that we send out earlier in the spring. So, and then the other thing that I would ask that you'd consider is section C under 504.110 is it says once notice shall be deemed sufficient on any lot or parcel or property for the entire once a notice be deemed sufficient on any lot or parcel or property for the entire season weed growth during the year. I'm sorry, I didn't get all the words right in there, but it says that you only need to be compliant once a year. Well, if you're compliant the second week of June, you can have your lot completely infested for the rest of the year because those plants are going to be coming up on a daily basis for about a month and a half. So that's just something.
So Carol, I mean, I think it's a great point and we're learning as we go through this. So, so I think, you know, I don't know what the right answer is yet, but that certainly is a good point. And we can look at that and think about how we,
right.
Change the language to be compliant through the weed growth season.
Right.
The other thing I think that's going to get us in trouble is because of that, where it reads now, if we go back and ding somebody who had a spray job done, they're going to say, I don't have to pay for this. I did what I was supposed to do. So I think we have to realize that we may not be able to do that this year just because of the way the language is in there. And I think they would have a very good case to push back against us if we tried to stick them with the bill. If they come in and hand us a receipt and say, I did this on June 14th, don't leave me alone.
Right.
So I think we have to think hard about whether or not we're going back around on folks this season or not.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll look to Cameron and Polly for some guidance on that, because I think we're gonna end up footing the bill if we have to do a second spraying.
Right. I have responded to some of these people who've already been treated earlier in June. I have asked them to reach out to Greenleaf and ask Greenleaf to come and evaluate their properties.
So I know on mine, for example, Greenleaf is coming back, and they said they're not coming back for free. So
well, I think, when it's been enough time, and it really is true that the weeds emerge almost on a very systematic, continuous basis.
The rain yesterday, for example, or today, for example, is probably going to bring up a whole nother batch. So yeah.
Well, and yeah, that's the nature of it. We do mention that in our letter, that they might have to treat more than once to keep it down. But the bottom line is that Wasatch County's requirement is, if they come by, look at your property, you've got any noxious weeds over 6 inches, you're out of compliance. So, but that is basically my report. Happy to take some questions.
Thanks, Carol. So Carol, I think I copied you. I wrote a note to Quentin. I think, one of the biggest issues we have is the state park is a huge abuser.
Yes.
It is a gigantic source of noxious weeds. And because the water level is so low, the entire shoreline is basically filled with noxious weeds.
Hmm.
And if if we don't find a way to incorporate them into this process, they're just going to be a feeder of seeds to everybody who's downwind, which is us.
Mayor, this is Chris. I have a little experience with weed spraying in the state park because of the trails that we developed in Ross Creek. So the state park doesn't actually have the personnel to be able to do this. They do rely on volunteer days and organization in order to get out there and spray. They will coordinate and provide the backpack sprayers as well as the chemicals that are already pre-mixed. But what they don't have is manpower. And so in the past, what we've done for the trails when we've done maintenance is, we've just organized a volunteer group of people who are willing to walk around with a backpack sprayer and start hitting stuff. So I can't imagine that I imagine, I haven't talked to the park manager lately, but I can imagine that that's probably the limiting factor, is just not having enough people.
I wonder if we could appeal to the Wasatch Weed Board to have a day when all of many of the people on the Wasatch Weed Board have treatment companies and they're very connected with all the treatment companies. I think it'd be great, just like they have the Jordanelle Cleanup Day, to have a day when all of the treatment companies agree to come and just give their time and their materials to help the park.
That's why I wrote to Quentin, to see if he felt like the county had any influence here.
Yeah. So, and in relationship to that, I do have a number of people who have emailed me who have treated their lots, and it takes some effort up in Golden Eagle, because the infestation in Golden Eagle is really bad now. And they are all saying to me, why should we go to the trouble of treating our lots way up here on this dirt road when Mustang has horrible infestation that they have not done anything about? So I think, here again, I'm raising the question, what are we going to do in response to non-compliance with them? And I will just seek guidance from Polly and Cameron and you, Mayor.
I'll take that one with the legal team and
yeah, and so if you just let me know.
Yeah.
I'll hold off with Mustang. And I believe I have a good enough relationship with Community Preservation Association. I can at least have some dialogue with them that would be non-threatening, that would just be sharing information, if that would be okay with you.
I don't see any harm with having dialogue.
No. I mean, I have a good relationship with Will Pratt and with Terry Hohenstein and
Okay.
Deborah. So,
Yeah, let's at least get their perspective on whether they.
yeah, I do
Can-
have a
before they do
suggestion.
anything.
I do have a suggestion that you might think about for next year. As we're spending many, many labor hours on this. And I mean, it may just be too far out there or not even be possible, but to just as we do standby fees, charge a weed abatement fee to everybody in the town and hire 4 different companies to just cover the entire town and get it done in a timely way so that these thistle don't go to flower and seed. And because right now it's being very difficult to handle, because if you start too early, they haven't emerged yet, but once they emerge, they're up and flowering within a couple of weeks. And I think if you just did an assessment to everyone and then had your companies in place at the like 3rd, 4th week of June or 1st week of July, you would just do the entire town in a timely way. That's a dream maybe, but I think that would be much more effective than what we've been doing.
I think it's a good thought. Let me again work with the legal team to understand what we can do legally as far as creating a fee like that. I don't know if we can, but we'll find out.
We do have a wheat bond now with our developers, so we've started.
Okay, well, thank you, Carol.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any other questions for Carol, guys and gals, ladies and gentlemen?
This is Chris. I just want to say thank you, Carol. This has come so far. Where you've gotten is so far from where we were a couple of years ago. And I know it's a tremendous effort, but you're making a real difference. And I am just delighted that we've gotten this far. You know, this is a war we'll never win, but we can certainly beat back the weeds and get to a place where, you know, we can live with whatever's the remainder there. But I just feel like you've done an incredible job, and
thank you.
I just want to thank you for that report. It's very encouraging and exciting that we may get this under control, because the consequences of us not getting it under control are pretty severe and will impact everyone in the community.
I want to second that. Thank you. Carol has done an incredible job and spent many hours on this, and we're really making progress.
Thank you.
I do want to add those suggestions you made, you know, for shoring up the code that we might be able to enforce perhaps next year. Yeah, I'd love to see those written up for us to consider, because I think we do want to continuously improve and start thinking about next year, even though you're still in the middle of this year, Carol, but
Sure.
start thinking about improvements for next time.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, same here, Carol. I thought you really did an excellent job. And yeah, get proactive about the recommendations you're making with, Cameron, and maybe come up with something for the next meeting or two that makes sense. And, maybe we can do something at least for the future, if not now.
I think we can improve our early communication as well.
Yeah, a lot of good suggestions there. Thanks.
Thanks for your input.
Oops. I just wanted to thank you also, Carol, and just wondered if possibly next year, it's too late this year, but next year, every year, some of us participate in the trash cleanup for our community. Could we also have a weed pulling event, maybe followed by a picnic or something like they do with the trash pickup? And if everybody that would participate would pull some weeds, at least that would get rid of some of the people who live in their homes. Just a thought for next year.
Sounds good. Just give them lunch, and the requirement is instead of bringing cans of food for the Utah Food Bank, they have to bring 3 bags of weeds or whatever.
Perfect. I like that.
So Sherry, since you've got the entertainment side of the committees, why not take that on?
Party.
Yeah, see if we're gonna have a weed party and not that kind of weed.
Yeah.
Can we make that legal in Hideout? I don't think.
That would be a great way to advertise it. You get lots of attendance, right?
Right.
People would misunderstand, I think.
Yeah, be careful what you ask for, though.
Okay. I'd like to move on if we can. Thank you. Our next item is discussion of the survey results. As you know, some of the survey was targeted at the boulders, which if you haven't caught up with it, has been withdrawn. The property owner decided he had spent enough time on it and chose not to give the developers any more time to get this resolved. So it is no longer an active project, and thanks to everybody who worked so hard on it, but it's now dead. But I think there's some good questions from the survey that we want to look at. So I'm going to go through this quickly. You've had a chance to see them. The Planning Commission went through it as well. A fairly broad response from across across the various constituencies of ownership. So you see there's continued to be heavy support for commercial, which, matches what we learned when we did the referendum on the annexation. So it continues to be highly supported. And then, there's there's a mix of comments from shame on us to let's figure out how to do some things a little closer. So, but a lot of people took time to put comments, which I think is great. And, we're looking at 60 comments here. So, so the questions are down here below because they got cut off in the charts, but basically the preference is a less dense residential development up there versus a more dense one. So if it comes back at some point, not Boulders, but somebody else comes back, it's clear that, general consensus is not as dense as what was being talked about. On the property tax issue, again, you're seeing that even with an increase in taxes, it seems to be the preferred choice. Not by a lot, by about 10 points, but to keep it less dense and pay more taxes, which is an interesting result there. And again, everybody was very comfortable. And this is a good one to talk about because we're going to talk about that next on the agenda, is some comments on nightly rentals. So you get, again, 60% did not support authorizing nightly rentals. Although we do have some areas that are authorized to have them. We're going to talk about those in a little bit. And then, we get some thoughts about how do we manage this. Again, pretty powerful response on that one. And then here are some of the concerns. So you can see traffic is pretty high. Noise in the midpoint. Pretty balanced approach to runoff and erosion. High response to, I can't quite see what that was. Obviously, traffic is a big one. Water availability is a big one. Density is a big one. Loss of open space. So, which again, all makes sense based on what's going on in the town right now. So. At the same time, fairly high numbers on the things that we've, that we're trying to address through annexation. So cafes, restaurants, parking, so that we can get to gatherings, and also for transit, grocery type facilities, and improved trails, and all getting fairly high numbers. So, and then again, continued support for trail connections. As far as a bond goes, we got basically 2/3 no and 1/3 yes. Which to me is okay, given the fact that we don't have a bond with some specifics around it yet. My belief is that if we were to go this way and had some specifics about what it was going to do, then we would certainly, obviously it has to go to vote anyway, but my belief is that we get a more supportive. If we had a great concept, we'd probably get more support. Let me put it that way, as opposed to just a generic question. There is, 60/40 on the recycling. At the moment, we have recycling services that are available on an individual basis. I think the biggest issues that came up in here, and there were some comments somewhere, on that is more about the part-time people. That I'm in town for 4 weeks a year. Why do I have to pay for recycling for the entire year? Kind of thing. And I just assume throw it in my car and take it to Park City. So I think that's something to think about if we decide to go further in the recycling space. And then there's a lot of comments across things that are some of which are municipal focused, some of which are not. So there's a lot of mixed opinions across the board here on how we're doing. So some people think we're doing a good job. Other people think we have a lot of things to work on. So. So I think this is helpful for us in steering some of the things that the council might want to work on going forward. What I'd like to do from this is ask that you as council members review the survey, and particularly the comments, and come back to us to us with your top 3 or 4 takeaways around what you see here, and as far as things that you might like to see us take on in the future. In addition to all the other things that we're working on, are there things in here that strike you as critical enough or strong enough that you hear strong enough responses as you look at this thing that you think we as a council need to add? What top 3 or 4 things would the council need to add to our issues and challenges from the survey? Because it's too much to take 60 line items times 10 questions. I mean, there's 600 things here. To talk about in a working session. So I'm going to ask that the council do some individual work reviewing it and coming back and saying, of this, the ones I heard the most, or as I read the most, that I feel strongly enough about, that pertain to the municipality. Obviously there's things in there that have nothing to do with us, but things that pertain to the municipality that you think we should try and do some work on, if that's okay with council.
Well, there's a couple of questions in there about, what are the priorities for the town? I think you summarized that really well. So, those are the things we probably should go back on from because I read this over a couple of times. Have we posted this for the?
Yes, Ralph.
Okay, wasn't sure about that.
Alicia can confirm, but I know it's in, it's in the minutes, it's in tonight's package. I don't know if we gave it a separate headline on the page.
Well, there was a lot of input from a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't ask for more input and really high response in relationship to our, population.
Yeah, no, we got
so
nearly
like,
200 responses. So yeah.
It's almost like we should have, I know this is open public meeting, but it's almost like we should have a discussion, or at least keep it open to the results on, a prominent webpage, because so many people spent some time putting a lot of effort into those comments. It's impressive.
So yeah, I think, Ralph, while there is your comment on there is a comment on top issues, but it was a list of issues that we identified, not issues and so the comment sections add, significant content, not all of it related to the 5 or 6 issues that we listed. We are working on construction, we are working on water, there's things on those issues that we're already working on, but there's also a lot of other thoughts that came forward from the survey that I think we need to take a look at and make a decision around if we win and if we would want to tackle some other things.
Yeah, great.
So I'm going to ask that that you review and come back to me with an email on your, any additional takeaways from after reviewing this in a bit more detail. And I will collect it, and then we'll take the collected list and take a look at it the next time we get together. Okay, other comments on the survey? So thanks to everybody who helped put the questions together, and we went through a lot of iterations, and you know, a lot of good thought went into it from a lot of folks trying to make it as applicable as possible. And I think based on the responses, clearly people were ready to talk about it. So that's great.
I just want to say thank you also, Mayor. I am really impressed with the response rate. There are a lot of responses here. I think this is a great tool for us. We've kind of proven that this surveying. Now, Ralph, I know you've been involved in 2 of them that I'm aware of. They've been really, really helpful. So I'm glad that we've proven that this is a good way to get feedback, and sounds like we should be doing this again in the future, you know, at our next opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's probably right, Chris. I think we might want to do something towards the end of the year just to tee up our thoughts for 2023 as well.
And it sounds like we have a platform with this Poly, maybe
Yeah.
to get some interim mini updates, so to speak. Like if we had, you know, clarifying question around a particular result that we got out of this survey or something that came up, we could use that mechanism to collect additional feedback. So it sounds like we're on the right way to.
Yeah, we have multiple mechanisms now. So yeah.
Whatever happened with that app we were going to do? Because that's
That's number 8 on this agenda tonight. So if you can hold off to,
what? Sorry, I didn't see that. I apologize.
I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Okay, thank you all. Next item is nightly rentals. So I'm not talking about saying yes or no to more nightly rentals in this particular section. I know that there are some requests from some developers for us to consider more, but we do have some approved nightly rentals. So phase 1 of Deer Springs, for example, Claim has nightly rentals as well. And the question is, and we have language to suggest that those nightly rentals are supposed to be managed by a professional management company, and we are supposed to be able to capture revenue because we have a transient room tax. But the reality is we currently don't seem to have a mechanism to police it. And so I know when I lived in Snyderville, in the Bear Hollow subdivision, the HOA, for example, policed the VRBO and Airbnb listings looking for properties that had addresses in there so they could approach the owners and remind them that they weren't allowed. I know that CPA does something similar for the not allowed nightly rental properties inside Hideout Canyon. So I think we need to figure out how we're going to start doing 2 things. One is, you know, understanding what properties are being listed and figuring out if we are allowed, and are we receiving the revenues that we're required to, they are required to provide. And because the CPA does not cover all of these properties, if we've got properties outside of the CPA that are not eligible for nightly rentals, how do we manage that? I'm open to getting some thoughts from council around how we might attack these issues or opportunities or both.
And Mayor, if I might just jump in, and I think Thomas is maybe a good resource as well. But I think there is also just the overriding discussion, not just of enforcement, although it's tied together, but also what policy does the town council want to have? And there are pluses and minuses, of course, to allowing nightly rentals. Yeah, the advantage is that you can get, as you said, the sales tax, and the disadvantage is that it can erode a sense of community because it's so, you have so much turnover in a home. So I don't know if Thomas wants to comment at all, but I think that, that's something that keeps coming up with these, with the few new subdivisions that there are, and other subdivisions, as you said, outside of the Hideout MDA area.
We certainly have survey results that were very strongly no to help us, consider that thought process as well, Polly. And we just looked at, it was 2/3 saying no. And then some it depends if managed properly kind of things, but.
Can I add one more thing to that? I think to what Polly said, those are really important considerations, but I think I've read where if you have nightly rentals, they actually erode the availability of long-term rentals. So for people who might need rental housing, who may not want to purchase or cannot purchase a home, it does make the inventory, there to be even less inventory for a long-term rental for, let's say, somebody who's not here on vacation, but rather needs a place to live because they work here. So I just wanted to add that as well as a consideration. But yeah, so Mayor, I do think the overwhelming, answer in the survey was we don't want more nightly rentals because of the erosion of that sense of community is probably what we could read into it, but maybe it would be, if we were to, ask that question again, we might want to rephrase it and give them, give our respondents a little bit more of a chance to explain themselves.
So I put this on the discussion tonight, and no disrespect, Polly, but I recognize that we will be asked to consider more, so we have to think about that. But we also have stuff that's already approved and we're not managing it. And so that concerns me, and that's why I put it on for discussion tonight, is to try and figure out how do we manage what we've already approved.
How many units are already approved, or how many doors, Mayor? Do you have that number? If it's all of Claim and then the first phase of Deer Springs,
Right.
we're talking about a really limited number of properties
I think
that
you
are
We're
not
talking,
part
well,
of
we're
the
talking
TPA.
100 and
Maybe 120. I think
110,
88
110,
units
115
in,
units, something like that.
yeah, 88 units in Claim, and I think 31 or 32 in
Yeah,
phase one of
So
Deer
about
Springs.
110, yeah.
Okay.
120, something like that.
I don't know. Write a program that that searches the internet for these addresses and pulls them up, showing up on sites. That's
Well, in theory, both of these locations are supposed to have professional management for these nightly rentals. So my feeling is that we could put onto the professional management firm the responsibility of doing that research.
We could also do something along the lines of, requiring business licenses for the nightly rentals and requiring all the, that information and affirmation that all the requirements are being met.
Well, that's what you have to do in Park City. When we had a rental, we had to apply for a business license, but a lot of people don't do that legally. So the problem is trying to find them. And shouldn't the HOAs where these are allowed help with that too? Because, the HOA claim should be aware of who's living there and who's a renter, a short-term renter.
And there is some software out there. There's one called Granicus. I don't know how much it would cost for such a small, well, I guess you could do all of Hideout we could try to get an estimate for them, how much it would cost to make sure that someone who's illegally posting, you can see if that happens or not. It's
What's it called, Polly?
I'm familiar
Granicus.
with, yeah, Grammicus, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and suggestion, I believe that's fairly expensive software. And it's not only that, then you have to manage it yourself. Suggestion is just to get a service, kind of a managed service for us, and get a quote on that, because managing software and policing it at the same time is probably not something we want to take on. That's just my 2 cents from being in the industry. And I know I think Grammicus is kind of on the higher end, Polly, as so maybe they have a service that we could get charged by the number of units that are being monitored. So if we have 110 units that need to be monitored, so to speak, then just we get the report once a month or every other, once a quarter or something like that. Just food for thought on this one. Maybe we need to figure out what that next step is, and what do other towns do? So how do they monitor this? Have we looked into that?
Ralph, that was a good question. What are other towns doing? This is a very active and developing area of law. I've been trying to connect to it since we adopted the TRT tax. There's some movement in the community to involve the chambers of commerce. And in that way, municipalities have more legal ability to respond. So again, it's really unclear, but it's a very active area. So I think we're going to get some definition here, and we can continue to dial into software packages, but listen to what other communities are doing.
Yeah, and we're so small, Jan, running, Park City can manage, so to speak, invest in this because it's so massive. And, they have, I'd say, a huge percentage of their dwellings are nightly rentals, but we're so small and we may be restricting this anyway. So we may, at this point, we're just stuck with the 110. How do we do that cost efficiently, So probably need some, I don't know, Thomas, do you have any input on that as well?
I would say, I think you're right. I think getting the software might be a tough call, but I think that given that there's really just 2 HOAs, it'd be the Deer Springs HOA phase 1 and then claim, maybe really coordinating with them. But I also agree with Polly. I would incorporate a business license and let people know that there's a business license requirement, and then there's a fairly significant fine if you don't adhere to the business license requirement. So that does encourage people to go ahead and get the business license if they are going to have nightly rental.
Right. And then that goes into your tax basis as well, because once you have nightly rentals, you're considered a non-permanent resident. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I have a place in Park City that we rent. We did that and we had to get a business license. And now that we rent permanently, we actually get the tax break of renting permanently. So if you rent year to year, from what I know, so we went back, we got the 45% discount once we flipped from, the nightly rental. So that's a benefit for, and it takes the burden off. And so that's an incentive to go the other direction by the owner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, that's an individual homeowner choice.
And just so
Yeah.
you know, Alicia just posted something saying she has received a couple or numerous applications for business licenses for nightly rentals from property management companies.
Okay.
So
Alicia, if you can.
we could get a quote from Granicus if you'd like. I mean, I've worked with them for our town, for the town of Brighton. They work with Brighton. I think they were doing problem is that you can't just enforce just based on that information. You have to actually find that people are renting. You have to have other evidence. Just posting on the internet isn't enough, but it is helpful to kind of get a sense of where people are posting to help look for the actual usage that way.
This is probably getting deeper than we, but I mean, if you're doing nightly rentals, then, and you're generating income, then you probably have to declare it on your tax return. Although I don't know if people are, but that would be, another place to get information. I don't know if we can require people to share their tax returns, but.
No, probably not. But I mean, the information is out there. I think the main question for, I guess the questions for the town are for the ones where it is allowed and for where people are doing it where it's not allowed. You want to, where it is allowed, you want to make sure that people are licensed and that you're collecting. Usually when people
Right.
go through Airbnb or some of those big internet ones, they automatically collect the local tax. So we should be getting it through the state. But then the other question is, the impact from the nightly rentals and what kind of complaints are you getting relating to noise or cars double parked or blocking traffic, that type of thing. Those are very common issues with nightly rentals.
Yeah, I don't know that we have enough info yet on that piece of the puzzle, Pauline, which we, it's why we put the management companies in place to manage that. And I think we can ask the management companies for, as well as our police relationship, to give us data on those kinds of calls. Because the HOAs may get the complaints and not the town, for example. But I like that idea of asking them to provide data to us. Okay. Other thoughts? I got a nice list here, guys. I appreciate that. But other thoughts? Let's see if we can do some noodling and come up with a plan for what we're going to ask the HOAs to do for us, for example, and review the business license process. Okay. Helpful, thank you. I got a nice list of thoughts. Okay, next item is the emergency operations plan. So, Cameron, do you want to take us through the adjustments here, if that's
Sure.
okay?
Yeah, happy to. Previously, the council may remember you adopted the Wasatch County Emergency Operations Plan and an order of succession. And so we had some discussions with Wasatch County to try and work out that logistics with that. And then after those discussions, what we've determined is that we just would create an emergency operations plan specific to Hideout. And so we've talked a little bit about this before, but just a brief overview. The town is responsible for emergency operations to the extent that its resources allow. So anything from an initial event up until the town no longer has resources to deal with the issue, it's the town's responsibility. And so that's what this plan is designed to cover. And so it covers the responsibility of all the various components within emergency operations. It covers the town council's role, the mayor's role, the town staff, It identifies resources and other support resources that there are. And it essentially is Wasatch County's plan with just the names and resources changed, because Wasatch County is going to be the next level that the operation would go to. Once the town runs out of resources, Wasatch County will step in. Once the county runs out of resources, it goes to the state and then to the federal, each one of those as the resources are exhausted. And so there really aren't any substantive changes. It's just a matter of changing the names of the groups, and some of the resources that were specific to Wasatch County aren't necessarily the same for the town.
Thank you, Cameron. So, so basically, council, we're basically adopting, if you will, the hideout version, which is, as Cameron said, in the primary difference being the call list that I just had up on page here. So this is really the major changes. We are required to have our own call list before we escalate. So we're really, what we've added to the plan versus what was there before is that basically, Tim gets the call, or I get the call, Jan gets the call, and then if none of us are available, you guys will get the call in the order of seniority on the council. So in the current council, it would be probably Chris, Ralph, and then I don't know if I have the order right. Then it's, then I think Carol, then Bob, then Sherry.
Actually, I think I'm second and Ralph is third.
Okay. We'll get that clarified.
Okay.
Alicia has all the dates, so I know she can figure that out for us. But that's basically the change in this not change, the difference in why we're looking to come back to you for your support in adopting this resolution. Any questions for Cameron or myself?
Hey, Cameron, it's Ralph. Yeah, I know we've talked about this before. We've gone through it at least once. Are there any modifications that you made other than that one section? Because sometimes it's hard to follow when we make changes, or you make changes, and then response to something we talked about. So just wanted to make sure that we're not missing anything, any changes that you may have made.
Yeah, good question. I started to do a red line version, and because Wasatch County has gone through a number of changes, and so the edits that showed up in red line just became unwieldy. There are not any substantive changes to this other than what the mayor just discussed, the order of succession. We had previously used Wasatch County's order of succession in their plan. So that's really the only substantive change. The other changes were, adding in definitions, clarifying what county agency would actually respond versus what town department would respond, because the Wasatch plan referred only to county resources. And so there really are no substantive changes.
Thanks, appreciate that.
Could I make a request? Since town council, all of us are on this list of possible people who would be in charge. And I have not the world's greatest printer. As a matter of fact, I have kind of crummy printer. Could the town print out the actual ordinances, the 52 pages, and provide each of us with a copy so that we could have it to refer to?
Sure. You can have your own version of the EOP. on your bookshelf. So when we call you at 2 a.m, you can start leafing through it. Sure.
Right, I do think that would be helpful.
That's the time
Yeah,
you need
we-
it at 2 a.m. when you can't think straight.
I
That's right.
agree. I agree.
Exactly.
I think it's a good idea to have a hard copy. I have no problem with it.
Then that leads me to the next question. I think in here, there is some exercises or training. I don't know if we ever contemplated having the town council members who are now in the order of succession that weren't there before to go through that training or exercises. Do we have anything planned for that?
Yeah, so there are online resources that are available for the incident command system, the first 2 levels. I'm happy to send Alicia some links to that, and she can distribute that to the town officials so that you can go online and take those courses. And they're strongly encouraged. I don't think they're necessarily required for elected officials, but they're required for emergency services personnel that are involved in that. And so it would be a good thing to get the council to go through those, so you're familiar with how the system works and how it's organized, etc.
Great, thank you. I very much appreciate that.
Me too.
And Cameron, should we have like a cheat sheet? I mean, if I am woken up at 2 a.m, I don't want to leaf through 52 pages of even a, printed out document. Is there kind of a, basically, just kind of a cheat sheet, or, what are the things that we really need to pay attention to?
Yeah, and that's actually what that initial training goes through. But practically speaking, what this will really involve for any of the town officials would be, you'll receive a call and you'll be told what the issue is and where the current emergency operations center is. And you'll go to the emergency operations center and essentially coordinate with all the other branches of the town government or the county government that is dealing with the resources. And so there's not really anything that you're going to need to know, when you're woken up in the middle of the night, other than where do I need to go? Where's the emergency operations center? And we'll go from there. But the rest of that stuff, once you get there, is going to be covered in that initial training. And it's actually described in the emergency operations plan. There's just not a lot of detail because the situations are so varied, it's impossible to know which you're going to look at first.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Cameron. Any other questions from council? Then I would request if someone would make a motion to adopt the resolution amending the emergency operations plan as outlined this evening.
So moved.
I'll
Who was
second.
that? Sorry, who made the motion?
That was me, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. And who was the second?
Sherry.
Thank you, Sherry. All right, Chris,
Yes,
how do you vote? Thank you.
my vote is yes.
Carol,
Yes.
thank you. Ralph,
Yes.
thank you. Sherry,
Yes.
all right, and Bob.
Yes.
All right, unanimously pass and adopt the resolution amending the EOP as described tonight. Thank you. Okay. Sorry that I'm get this screen stuff zipped by you, but I'm on my iPad tonight and it doesn't do the chapter stuff very well. So, all right, the last thing is the Poly platform. So we heard from and Alicia, you can jump in if I get something wrong here, but Poly folks have been working with Alicia and some of the town staff to put together the format and appearance and all that kind of stuff of the app. And then what happens is when the Poly platform folks have to submit that app to both Android and iOS, Apple, for approval. And because it's tied to a municipality, a government entity, there's a fairly strict approval process, which has taken some time to get through. But the feedback from the Poly Platform folks earlier this week was that they expected to be ready to go tomorrow. I don't know. Alicia, have you heard anything on that? Is that date still good, or next week sometime, or do we know?
Honestly, I haven't heard anything from them.
Okay. But his
I can-
note did say he expected to have it done this week, so.
Yeah, I can definitely reach out to him either tomorrow or Monday and see where we're
Yeah.
at.
So once we can download it, we'll get you the link and we can all download it and look at it on our phones and play with it a little bit. And so we can determine if we think it's in a condition to start sharing and broadcasting to the community, or we think we have to make any modifications. So, so hopefully in the next few days, we'll send you a link for the Poly Platform, and we'll send it to some other not random, but some other folks to try it, including staff and planning commission, whatever, and it's just to get some input and play with it a little bit. And hopefully by the end of July, we'll be ready to start rolling it out.
So Mayor, I actually have the app on my phone from the App Store, the iPhone app, Apple App Store. So, and I can see that Hideout is not an organization in there yet. So I think we can download the app now and wait for Hideout to be rolled out. But I'm happy to, test it out when it's available.
Thank you.
And this is good for any iOS device or any,
Yeah, Android or iOS. Yeah.
okay. So iPad obviously would qualify like you're.
Yeah,
using.
I mean, it's for, it's going into both app stores.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. Okay, cool.
So, and as I said, hopefully, again, there were some hurdles to get through for the municipality stuff, and then the Apple guys or the Android guys have got to get it loaded into their infrastructure. So it should be any day now. And then we'll be a selectable entity that we can then start working on. Okay. That's where that is. Polly, do you need us in executive tonight?
No, I don't, not unless there's, no.
Because I mean, Polly did send a attorney-client message to all of you to kind of bring you up to date on the various items pending or reasonably imminent litigation, personnel matters, and/or sale acquisition of real property.
Hey, Polly, that was really useful email. So just to call you out on that, I thought it was well written and a good job. So personally, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
So if that's not necessary, then I would suggest we might choose to close the meeting and adjourn. If you're comfortable with that, I need a motion to do that.
So moved.
I'll second.
That was Carol, right?
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Ralph, I didn't hear your voice. You said yes.
Oh, yeah, I definitely said aye.
Okay.
Say it again.
Aye. Opposed? Any opposed? All right, then we'll close the meeting of the 14th of July, 2022. Thank you all for your participation and stay safe, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you. Good night.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night.